Welcome back. If you are just joining us, you are watching part 2 of tonight's 3-part episode. We just finished part 1, where we both did a tasting of Bulleit Bourbon Frontier Whiskey. Ken, how's the Bulleit treating you?
It's treating me well. It's a great selection for tonight. I'm enjoying it.
I am too, and I'm definitely going to have to be topping off my glass soon. But I'm going to choose to at least get through the opening before I do that. I'm really looking forward to getting into our discussion of Sons of Anarchy. But before we do, I want to start by asking everyone to like and subscribe, click the little bell so you don't miss any future episodes, and do leave us your comments and questions. You can do so in the comment section below. You can also email your questions to us at ask@bourbonbros.tv. And as I am probably going to say often, if your question doesn't suck, we might even answer it on a future episode. And as Ken likes to say,
we might even review it if it does suck. So
absolutely. So just send us your questions. And with that out of the way, let's get into tonight's discussion. Again, first episode of Kurt Sutter's Sons of Anarchy. We're at season 1, episode 1, with the incredibly original name of Pilot.
Very original.
What's that?
Very original, that's for sure.
Very original. But it is par for the course. And the original air date is, we have to go back a little bit, September 3, 2008.
Not a new show by any means.
Not a new show.
Making me
the
feel
episode
old.
was written. Tell me about it. The episode was written by, surprise, surprise, Kurt Sutter. And I'll give, for those that maybe have been living under a rock and have not seen this show, and again, want to remind everyone, if you are not familiar with the show, you have a gift waiting for you. The entire series is available on Hulu. We have no affiliation to Hulu, and they've not paid us 1 red cent. We're just helping you out and letting you know where to find the show. But here's a quick synopsis if you haven't seen it. The Mayans Motorcycle Club raids a warehouse in Charming that is owned by the Sons of Anarchy, and it is full of guns, and they burn it to the ground after they steal the guns. Jackson, otherwise known as Jax Teller, the vice president of Sam Crow. Ken, what does Sam Crow stand for?
Sam Crow stands for Sons of Anarchy Motorcycle Club Redwood Original.
That's right. And you're going to see that a lot on this show. But yes, Jax is the vice president of Sam Crow, and he moves into the Sons of Anarchy clubhouse after leaving his pregnant ex-wife, Wendy, who is a heroin and crystal meth addict.
Fine, outstanding individual.
Yes. And then while Jax is visiting a storage locker looking for old baby items, he discovers his deceased father's old keepsakes, including a memoir of his life as a founding member of the Sons of Anarchy. And the memoir details John's high hopes for and disappointments in the Sons of Anarchy. And we'll get into this, but this does become kind of a common thread through multiple episodes. And then Jax's mother, Gemma, worries that her son is going soft and relays this fear to her husband, which is Sam Crow president Clay Morrow. What were your overall thoughts on the episode, Ken?
Well, as every series that I watch like this, the first episode, or the first few episodes, you're trying to, they're laying the foundation. You're kind of watching and observing what's happening. This one had me hooked from the very first episode. I don't know about you, but it does a great job. There's a lot of humor in it. Some some violence that we'll become accustomed to,
Yes.
and laying some of the color with the characters. It had me hooked. What were your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree. It's a strong pilot, and look, in my experience, most pilots suck.
Mm-hmm.
For the reasons you described, that you have to spend so much time introducing characters, setting the foundation, building plot points, giving backstory, that there's generally not a lot of meat on the bone in terms of the episode. And I thought Kurt did a great job at doing those things that he needed to do, right? Introduce characters, give some backstory. But at the same time, he created a very entertaining episode.
I'd agree.
And the only kind of ding that I would give it is from the perspective of, because I have seen future episodes, it does not end up as strong as some of those other future episodes that are coming up. But that's just Kurt setting a higher bar. If you take all of those future episodes away and you just look at the merit of the pilot, it's incredibly strong.
Yeah, very.
And so if we talk about some of our favorite moments, anything that kind of immediately jumps out to you as noteworthy or discussion worthy?
I mean, let's start with the opening. I mean, they're trying to open with Jax. He's on his motorcycle. He ends up at a convenience store, and he walks in and somewhat flirting with the receptionist there. Not the receptionist,
Well, and even before that, let me back you up a little bit, because it's a very cinematic opening. What no one realizes yet is that image of those two crows has very specific meaning and will come back later on in the series.
That's true. So remember that,
Yes.
put a pin in that, because it'll recur. But you don't know that at first, though.
And I think that's a great, for someone like you and I who have already seen the entire series and we're now going back and starting over, I had really forgotten about that opening scene because it was so long ago, and at that point you don't really have any sense of why that would be important. But it does go to show you that from the moment Kurt Sutter started writing this series, he knew where he wanted to take it.
He knew where it was going, every bit about it.
So I interrupted you, but I just wanted to mention that opening scene and the crows because it is significant. But going back to the scene where he's in the convenience store.
Yeah, so good point. Thanks for bringing that up. I mean, that's very important. I had forgotten about that. But at the beginning, you don't know who Jax is. He's riding this motorcycle. He's,
Right.
You see a cigarette kind of flipping in the wind. I don't know why it's not going out.
Right. He's just, just living the dream.
Living the dream. So he pulls up to this convenience store and walks in, and he's looking at some things. He's looking at children's books, and
which is odd.
Jack's selection of things to buy were interesting. Let's just say that. But he brings a children's book, some condoms, and asks for some cigarettes, right?
Well, what was really interesting is he actually puts the children's book back and only gets the condoms and the cigarettes. But because the cashier saw him looking at the children's book, she slid it into the bag.
Right. She said it was one of her favorites, too, as I recall.
Right.
Anyway, at the same time, nearby, there's a motorcycle club. It appears to be a rival gang called the
Meanwhile,
Mayans.
back at the Batcave.
Yeah, right. raiding this warehouse. They're stealing guns. They're M4s and assault rifles.
Yep.
And they've decided to blow up the warehouse and burn it down. So that's kind of the opening scene, which I believe all that happens before the credits, the opening credits, right?
It does, yes. And what we soon learn is that Jack's part of the Sons of Anarchy motorcycle club. That was their warehouse. Those were their guns. Mayans, a rival gang, stole those guns and blew up that warehouse.
Right. You figure that out.
It then kind of shifts gears a little bit, and I want to mention a scene that kind of for a pilot immediately had an impact on me, and that was the scene, I refer to it as ice cream and cigarettes, to give you a clue on where I'm going.
Mm-hmm.
So you now get introduced to Wendy, which we'll later learn is Jax Teller's ex-wife, but she's kind of, you can tell she's a junkie. She's kind of on a bender, right? She's trying to avoid taking drugs. And so she goes for the ice cream. And then later you see that she does succumb to the temptation and the addiction of the drugs. And jumping ahead, you'll actually see later where she actually puts the cigarette out in the ice cream, right? As like a, F you ice cream, I'm going for the heroin. But all of this is happening without really tipping its hand. And again, it was all kind of brilliant by Kurt Sutter. You have all of this happen. You now know, she's a junkie. She's an addict. She's shooting up. But then it slowly pans out and you discover that she's pregnant. You just felt.
Not only is she an addict, but she's putting her child at risk, Jax's child.
Yes. And you don't know yet really who she is or what's going on, but you see it's like the lowest of lows.
Let's jump over to a little more enlightening topic. I don't know if you...
you want to lighten things up?
We'll try, and I don't know. Just a point that I noted was a little bit of humor.
Sorry to bring the show down.
No, I mean, that's important. I mean, it shows there's a lot of serious moments, even in this episode.
There are a lot of heavy moments.
Yeah, there is, which kind of makes it, it adds to the whole feel of the episode, in my opinion. But when they jump back to Teller Motors, the one of the first glances we get at Teller Motors, there's a BMW, and
which is where the club is located.
Yeah, that's where the club's located. And there's a BMW pulling in the driveway there. And there is a deer that's jammed through the front windshield. Do you remember that?
Oh, yes.
Kind of comical.
Oh, yes.
But
great one-liner by Jax.
Yeah, he said...
Some days you're the Beamer, some days you're the goddamn deer.
It was funny.
And you've got a prospect there, Half Sack, right? We'll later learn his name's Half Sack, and we'll later learn why his name is Half Sack. But as a prospect, like, you're basically there to do whatever the club tells you to do, right? You're not a full patch member yet. And so he's working at Teller Motors, and he's looking at this scene of this deer through the windshield of a BMW, and he's like, what do I do? Like, this is not an oil change, right? Like, this is a whole nother thing. Mm-hmm. And I love, again, the response from Jax and to Half Sack in that moment.
Right. He says, figure it out, right? This is your problem to figure out. Kind of his hazing period, like you mentioned. So,
yes, and he hands him a chainsaw and says, figure it out.
When he's telling him to figure it out, he mentions he's a vegetarian, so that added some humor. But anyway, so that I
love how he decides to keep the head.
Yeah, that's right. He does. He sticks it in a box and sets it underneath the pool table. And later on in the show, they come back and find it there. he didn't bother to think through how a deer is taxidermied to keep it from rotting.
It's gotta be stuffed and treated, you idiot.
Yeah, no, just stuffed with what?
And it's a bit of a slow burn, right? Right before church, people are walking into the clubhouse and kind of, what's that smell, right? And then they go and they do church, and then they come out, and then and I think it was Tiggs, like, you smell that too? Mm-hmm. Great comedic scene, and again, Half-Sack just clueless on taxidermy and what needs to be done to actually mount a deer head on the wall. Now, we've had something that's kind of really heavy. We've had this comedic aspect that comes in, and that I would say is very common for this series as a whole, right? You get, like you said, some violence, there's some heavy subject matters, and there's some great laughs.
A lot of good one-liners.
What's that?
Good one-liners as well.
Great one-liners. Yeah, absolutely great one-liners. But there's also something that was introduced right away in the pilot that is a common thread for the series. And that was when Jax went to the storage shed. Now, he went there looking for like old baby items, right? Because we find out that, his ex-wife is expecting, he's having a baby. He's looking for baby stuff, and he discovers this box. And we don't initially know what it is as the viewer, but we soon learn that it's a box of stuff that was his dad's, who is now passed on. And it's old photos, yearbooks. You see some VHS cassettes in there. And he runs across a journal.
I burn like oil, you bloom like fire.
For my sons, Thomas, who's already at peace, and Jackson, may he never know this life of chaos.
And basically it is a journal that his dad has wrote about his vision for the Sons of Anarchy motorcycle club. And you, as all of this unfolds, you realize that he founded the club with the now current president, Clay Morrow. And so it's John Teller, Jax's dad, Clay Morrow. They founded the club. John Teller, Jax's dad, is now no longer here. And so we also find out that Clay has now married Jax's mom. So Clay's now his stepdad. Right. So there's a lot of like, and Kurt's very kind of quick with it. He doesn't beat you over the head with it. But as you kind of connect the dots and piece everything together, if you're Jax, it's basically my dad died and my mom hooked up with his best friend.
Right.
And he's now my stepdad. Right.
Right.
And all Jax knows, having now grown up to an adult and being not only part of the club, but the vice president, right below Clay, is what Clay has told him, right? That's all he knows, because he wasn't old enough to understand any of this when his dad passed. And so now he has this journal where he's getting a different opinion than what Clay has told him. And this kind of continues through future episodes, right? It's a very common theme, but you get a little taste of it in this episode where what his dad wanted for the club is very different than the club that Jax knows today.
Right. He finds himself doing a lot of soul searching
throughout
the series, but you see it starting to happen in episode 1.
What else? We have Wendy, who's now basically gone to the hospital, right, because of her drug addiction. And the baby was born prematurely. You want to talk a little bit about what happened here?
Yeah, well, Jax shows up, and we're introduced to Tara, right? Tara is his girlfriend from a prior relationship.
Yep. Yeah, which real quickly I've got to say, right? You've got Jax, who used to go out with Tara. They broke up, and then he got with Wendy and ended up marrying Wendy. Like right off the bat, like this was not a great decision, right?
No.
You broke up with the one that became the doctor, and you married the one that became the junkie.
Right. I don't know if you caught, but Gemma, when she calls him and tells him one at the hospital, and they're walking down the hallway, Gemma tells him that they found some, what is it? Matches? Some match.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes, that's right.
With the
yes,
hair of the dog.
great pull.
Hair of the dog.
Yes, and so Jax
on it?
knows exactly
Where to go.
who sells drugs out of that establishment,
Right.
and
So
just hightails it.
He hightails it straight there, and he walks in the front door of Hair of the Dog, and I don't know how
And
he...
is it Bobby and Chibs who basically follow and have his back?
Yeah, Clay asked them to follow him because he suspected something was going down.
And Bobby, who's one of my favorites, has a great one-liner in this scene.
What did
Do you
he
remember
say?
what he said?
No.
So
Remind
if
me.
you remember, Jax took the pull cue, right, and basically jammed it through the guy's genitals.
Yes.
And then once Jax is done and like he's gone, Bobby's basically holding everybody at gunpoint and says,
There you go, your lunch. Shish balls are on me.
That's right.
so we've got time for one more before we wrap up part 2. Let's talk a little bit about church.
Okay.
A lot happens really quickly. in
Very
church,
quickly.
Right? And it's always stuff you have to pay attention to.
It lays the plot a lot of times.
Yes.
And that's what's going on. You have to... I find myself having to rewatch it, but there's a lot that goes on there.
And this is one of the things that I love about Kurt Sutter and the choices he made on this show as a whole, right? They often use a lot of code. They use a lot of slang. They use a lot of kind of abbreviations. And Kurt doesn't take the time to explain it.
Nope.
You've got to figure it out, right? And I love that. If you don't know what's going on, too bad.
You missed out. Watch it again.
That's right. In this particular case, they're really talking about what happened in that opening scene where the warehouse, their guns were stolen, right? And the warehouse was blown up.
Watching it again for the, I don't know, 5th or 6th time, it really provided a lot of color to me with the characters. I mean, you've got Chibs there, and you have Tiggs, making his lewd comments. You have Piney sitting there with he's got oxygen tank on him. He's an older member of the club.
Right. One of the originals.
One of the originals. He used to be friends with Jax's dad, and you have Opie there who calls him dad, so you realize they're related. This is like the next generation of the club, but there's some old members there. There's just a lot of color being painted to the characters. That's what jumped out at me.
And you're absolutely right. But the key kind of topic around church in this episode is really about the fact that the Mayans have stolen guns that they have already sold.
Yeah.
Right?
They sold them to the Niners.
They sold them to the 1-Niners, and they're bought and paid for. Like, all that's left for them is to deliver them. And then the money that they make from that sale also goes to the IRA where they bought the guns. Right? So the 1-Niners have already given them money for the guns. They have no guns to deliver. They have to take the money that the 1-Niners gave them and give that to the IRA. Right? And then they keep their cut. And then on top of that, they've got future shipments of guns from the IRA and no place to store them. because their
Right,
warehouse.
because the warehouse burned to the ground.
Like Clay initially is like, where are we going to find more guns?
Right. I recall
Right.
this now. Yeah.
And yes.
Jax is asking the question, again, reading his dad's writing about, was the club intended to be...
Well, hold
meant
on.
for-
So before that, Jack says, basically, we're not going to get another set of guns. We're going to get our
Those
guns
guns, yeah.
back. But then to your point, after church, they're kind of having a party. They're having a good time, and they're talking casually around what they're going to do about where they can find property and where they're going to put a new warehouse that will be off the grid and where it's not going to raise any flags with local police or ATF. And this is where Jax then shows a completely different side.
What happened if we didn't rebuild?
What do you mean?
Take the land profit, put it in something else.
That was the kind of first inkling of where Clay's questioning Jax's motive in questioning that.
Right.
If you've not seen future episodes and you're just watching the pilot for the first time, I think a lot of this is going to go right over your head. And it's
Yeah,
not
but you'll
until
appreciate
later
it
on.
later. You'll appreciate it later.
Yes. Yes. And so if you're new to the show and you're discovering it because of this janky YouTube show that we're doing, the one piece of advice I can give you is there's very little in here that does not have a purpose.
Said so well.
It all means something. And with that, we're going to wrap up part 2. Remember to like and subscribe. Please check out our channel for more episodes. And be sure to join us for part 3, where we'll continue enjoying some Bulleit bourbon. And we'll wrap up our discussion of the pilot episode of Sons of Anarchy. Stay with us.